book 77 of 2020 was The Hiding Place by Trezza Azzopardi. So this book was a Secret Santa. I used to be part of this book club, and once a year they'd do Secret Santa, and they must have done it in different ways, because I do remember one year they were wrapped up as like a present and we gave them to each other. So like I'd buy the book and then give it to my Secret Santa, and then, well, not give it because obviously it's secret, but we'd put them all there and you'd get your kind of book, and then it would come to light later on who had kind of gifted it. But this year it was an audio book, so I don't know if they sent me an audio book or I bought it myself. I'm not quite sure how it happened, but anyway, I listened to this book on audio. It's not something that I would normally read. I would not be attracted to something like this. The person that was my Secret Santa has very, very different taste in books to me, so I was like, I'm not looking forward to reading it. And yeah, let's get into it and tell you what it's about. So, Azzopardi immerses you immediately into family drama. And this is through the lens of the main character, who's called Dolores Gauci. Can't remember how to pronounce the name. I should have listened back to it. Anyway, she's the younger sister of 6 sisters, very, very large Welsh-Maltese family. Obviously, at the time, I don't think I really realised that it was... No, I must have done, because it said he was from Malta and she was speaking a Welsh accent. I must have known this, but I didn't really put 2 and 2 together. She's introduced initially with a disfigured arm that's basically been burnt in a fire. And it's like... It's described as like... like a candle where the wax melts on the candle, and that was what her arm was like. And I was like, what? So yeah, that was like an image that you were kind of given in the beginning. And anyway, this kind of like being burnt in the fire ties, she ties this thread up towards the end, and you find out why she ended up in the fire, and it kind of like, brings it all back round again. So there's a little bit of a kind of foreshadowing there that she ties up later on. And obviously towards the end, you get the additional like adult perspective of Dolores. So like you've got like what it was like a child, and then she's recounting on it and then kind of like talking about it a little bit. However, this attempt that Azzopardi makes to make the narrative seem childlike, because obviously she's viewing it from the lens of when she was a child, the main character Dolores, it sometimes does feel quite forced, and it doesn't really change very much from when Dolores is an adult. And I think this is something that a lot of books suffer from when you've got an aging of characters, is that the characters don't change very much. And it's like, I mean, when I think about how I was as a kid and how I am now, it's very different. I think very differently. I talk very differently. I don't know, it's just not demonstrated very well in books. Characters don't seem to age very well, and they don't seem to change. And maybe it's because you're trying to get the reader to understand that it's the same person, but people change a lot, and that, it's not done very well in this book. But then, it's not done very well in many books, so it's not really, I suppose, a criticism that many people will be bothered about, I suppose. But yeah, this kind of forcing of it as well, so it didn't really seem very authentic. The father, Frankie, basically spends all the family's money on gambling. He even gambles his own daughter, Marina, to a gang member of a Maltese Mafia. In his absence, because he's obviously always gambling, Mary's wife, Dolores' mum, has to sell everything, including herself, to feed a large family. And whilst I was reading it, I did question the likelihood of, gang involvement in Wales. But I was really shocked, because when I Googled it, like it is something that's like very kind of prevalent in like Welsh history. And I was like, oh, like I'm the naive one here for not realising at the time that this, to me, when I was reading it, I was like, this is so far-fetched. Like, what is the chances of, someone from Malta being part of the, a mafia in Wales. Like, it was just like, what? But actually, like, it is a thing. It is something that has happened. It's been in the news because I've seen it on Google. So yeah. So yeah, maybe it was feasible. And then Fran, one of the sisters, is a pyromaniac. And so, because you've got the mum who's selling herself for money in a sexual way, prostituting herself. You've got the dad who's gambling his own daughter. You've got the sister who's setting fire to everything. She was burning a fire when she was younger. It all just seems a bit far-fetched, and it's a bit like, yeah. And actually, on a point right at the beginning of the book, because I was just thinking back to when I was listening to the book, it was very confusing in the beginning because there's so many characters, and obviously it was on audio, so it's not like I could really see what was happening, because it was like I was building the picture in my mind as it was going through. So very kind of difficult to keep track of all of the characters. You've got the 6 sisters, you've got the mum, you've got the dad, you've got the his friends. I'm already on 9 characters, and there's lots more as well. So it was really kind of challenging in the beginning to kind of figure out what was going on and what all who all these people were. And then Dolores' recounting of the fragmented memories is also questionable, because there's times when she comments on things that she couldn't possibly have known from her perspective, from her age, from what happened. She wasn't there, or you know what I mean? It was like she was recounting these fragments of memories that she couldn't possibly have had. But then I suppose I've put excuse me, in my review, that whilst I appreciate that children have memories that are pieced together by other means, such as retelling of events by others, it didn't feel like this in the narrative, and it felt more of an oversight by Azzopardi rather than an intentional thing that she was doing, or if it was intentional, it wasn't done very well. There was also a lack of emotional development of the characters. The relationship between Dolores and her sisters is very odd. Sorry, I'm going to have a drink. I just downed some water before, so I feel like that might have caused the coughing. Yeah, the relationship between her and her sisters is a bit odd. When she's older, it seems that at no point that they've had any contact since leaving home, and yet they're all together for the funeral, which suggests that they had contact details because they all came together for it. So it's a little bit like, why would they have not have kept in touch when they left? But then I wonder about this, because maybe it's a sign of the times, in that when you left the family home and went wherever, maybe there was no telephone, or you just kind of wrote letters, and maybe you didn't really write letters, and I don't know. I can't even remember when this kind of was set. But it just seemed a little bit odd, because then when they did come together, they were kind of still as if they were sisters, but then they not see each other for all that time. It was just a little bit weird. And I've put, again, perhaps intentional due to their separate experience, but it didn't feel authentic. So I don't know, it wasn't a very good writing of the characters when they came back. There was a lot of when they were kids together, but then not very much when they were older. I wonder actually if there was part of the story where she became separated, whether they went into care or not. I can't quite remember. I was just thinking of it then. Maybe that had explained it. But yeah, the whole story just seemed a little bit like there was a lot going on. It seemed very far-fetched. The relationship and character development wasn't that good. So what I put, kind of overall a light read, but too many fantastical events and inconsistencies for me to enjoy it. However, having said that, the person that recommended this book for Secret Santa loved it, but then, as I mentioned right at the beginning, she had very different taste to me. She liked a lot of books that I thought were dreadful. So, you might like it, but definitely not for me. So I gave it 2 stars out of 5, and I will not be reading any more of her books.